Tissue paper. Hello, everyone. Kim Victoria here, and I got out all the tissue paper that I currently have. At least I think this is everything. It's quite a bit, a lot of nice colors and patterns and things like that. I have used tissue paper as a painting medium, and I want to share that with you today. I want to show you that. I'm going to do a comparison demonstration with three tags. And I have three tags ready to go. So I'm going to do a demonstration with the three tags. I have something very specific in mind. I have here from a calendar a Matisse piece of art. What's that got to do with tissue paper? Because I have used tissue paper as a painting medium, a collage medium, a texture medium. There's a lot of possibilities with tissue paper. And here's just a quickie. Just a simple layer where you do a little distressing and you can rubber stamp on it. This just happened to be this tissue paper that came in a bag with something I bought. But you can take any of these blank tissue papers and rubber stamp on them. Now, the key to that is you would want to use a permanent kind of ink. You don't want to use a distress ink. You'd want to use like Stays On, or I have Memories permanent dye inks. Um, I I don't know if VersaFine is a permanent, but if you're going to do collage with it, you want to use a permanent type of ink. So that's the one thing. You don't want a water base. Distress also makes an archival. So that's a permanent. So that's the sort of ink you would want to use. But well, let me start with the demo and go to chapters. If there's something specific you want to see, I've put down in the chapters where all these different things start. And there's also a link to a journal I made called the Primitive Journal. And I did a whole bunch of collage doing this kind of thing, but covering an entire cover, and I had a good time with it. So let me move this out of the way, and we're going to texture and stamp and paint, and we're going to have some fun. So will I get it all done? I don't know, but I'm going to try, and I'm going to try and make these little demos a little more compact. Because once you get the idea, you can just run with it. Okay, let's go. I'm going to do a three tags demonstration. So I've got my three tags. And the first thing that you're going to need to do this kind of thing is either, this is cereal bags. So whenever we have cereal that has bags, I save them. But the other thing you could use is you could use, well, I've kind of got over here a little mess, but you could also use plastic bags from the grocery store if you have those. You could use the dollar store tablecloths. Those, they're just plastic. So you're looking for some kind of a slick plasticky or a plastic coated paper, something that glue doesn't like to stick to, okay? So for this first one, what I've done is I've put the tag underneath the plastic because what I want to do is I'm going to do three different techniques. And on this one, I'm going to ink the tissue paper first. So let me move that up, get it in the camera frame a little better. There we go. Okay, so I've got myself some permanent dye inks, and this is tissue paper from pattern paper from sewing. And I always have offcuts when I do sewing, but you can go to thrift stores and get patterns paper really, really easily. This would work just as well with your generic white tissue paper or any other simple color. I'm going for something light and simple because that makes the demonstration clear. How this is exactly going to work out, I'm not sure. But what I want to do is I put the tag underneath the plastic so that I can stamp off to the sides, but I'm not getting any ink on the tag at this point. I want to just have ink go off onto the plastic. So I'm just going to be very random here and just make sure that you go off the edge. And I start with the lightest color in this particular case because that's much easier. Because then I'm going on to the next color. Well, I think that's plenty of stamping. So now I'm going to let that ink dry. All right, so for the next one, this is another cereal bag. Now for the next one, I'm going to stamp directly on the tag, and it will all make sense at the end. And ghost stamping is always nice. It just adds a little texture to the background. You're sort of just inking off that way. It just creates that little ghost image. You have to be a little careful stamping on the light tissue because it's very fragile. We can be a little tougher with the tag itself. And this is just plain white cardstock, nothing special. It's not mixed media paper or anything like that. It's just very basic cardstock. Okay, so there's random stamping for that. And then I'm just going to set that aside. Okay, so I've got a tag for the first one. I've stamped on the tag for the second one, and for the third one, I'm going to tissue paper on the tag first. Let it dry, and then we'll rubber stamp on top of the dry tissue paper that's been glued onto the tag. So what I am using is I do have the watered down PVA adhesive. So this is just Elmer's white glue, just school glue, normal stuff. I have a little tub of water here, and I have a funky brush. This was just a very inexpensive brush, and I use it for gluing. And it really has gotten kind of beat up, and it works great. I just keep it clean. I do wet my brushes first, and what that does is it gets water up close to the ferrule. This is called a ferrule. It gets water into the bristles up to the ferrule. So when you get the bristles wet before you glue or paint with acrylics, what it does is that it creates that water being there so that the glue or the paint doesn't suck into so close to the ferrules. It just dries so fast because the bristles are dry. So it just dries really fast. But if you get the bristles wet first, it gives you a little margin of time and the paint doesn't dry fast in the bristles. So there's just a little tip that I've discovered over the years. So I just get the bristles nice and wet and then I just damp it off on this is just old cotton t-shirt. When my husband's t-shirts wear out, they make fantastic rags. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this is a dilute of about 2/3 white glue to 1 part water, and I added a little instant coffee to this. I added it to the water, and then I added the water to the glue. So I got this little tan colored glue. So that's why that is the color it is. And since this is tan colored paper, that's fine. That just works fine. So I'm just going to scrub a little glue onto this paper, and yes, it will wrinkle, but it will flatten out also afterward. So get that on. Whoop, make sure I get it on there straight. Or I don't care if it's straight, I want it to be fully on. And the thing about tissue paper that's kind of neat is that you can get crinkles in it. I mean, it's like I can be a little more deliberate about this and actually encourage crinkles. What you don't want is you don't want air bubbles. And air bubbles are a problem because the tissue paper is soft, and when you get air bubbles in there, they're liable to break and You don't want that. So all I'm doing here is I'm kind of looking to get a few little crinkly bits. When you do this with tissue paper, you can get all kinds of neat effects. So I could have been even more deliberate about getting some crinkles. So on a small piece like this, it's pretty easy to avoid the air bubbles. Okay, so there's that one, and I'm going to let that dry. Okay, this is where I stamped on the cardstock, and the ink is still wet on the plastic. So I'm just going to wipe that off with my rag. Okay, now I'm ready on this one to apply the tissue paper. And this is where you definitely want a permanent dye ink because this is a water-based glue and it would just smear all your ink. But it won't smear your dye-based permanent inks. Okay. I'm going to crinkle this paper. Let's get it nice and crinkled up. And then put it down kind of slowly. So I did put the glue down first, and now I am putting the glue down on the top. And this is where you can deliberately start to add some wrinkles. It's kind of fun to add those wrinkles. That's where you get your fun textures and everything. And you definitely want to have more glue and work. Mostly when you start brushing it, you want to brush from the center out and make sure you get rid of the air bubbles and be very, very delicate with it. You don't want to be pushing hard. You just want to gently make sure you've got glue coverage over the whole thing. Okay. And by doing this on the plastic, I know that it's going to release. So I'm making sure I go glue all the way off the edges, but I'm leaving some, paper tissue loose. Okay, so now that one needs to dry. I do not see any air bubbles. Okay, let's put that one away. And now we're back to tissue first. So I can see it's still wet because this tissue was on the plastic. Let me make sure you can see that. This tissue I inked on the plastic, and you can see that it did do some bleeding because this tissue paper is very soft, so the ink has a chance to spread. So I need to kind of let that air, and while that's airing, I'm going to wipe off the ink from this plastic, which I could leave it there. I could have put this over the top and gotten kind of a ghost image. Come to think of it, that might be something I have to try in the future. Interesting idea, right? Let me just get this out of the way. Okay, so there's our tag. And there's our kind of blurry tissue paper. Now I have a choice on this. I could turn the tissue paper over and put the ink side down, or I can leave the ink side up. Let me see. There's a little bit of wetness still there. I'm just going to go for it though. I'm not going to crinkle this one. I don't want to smear the ink any more than necessary. So yeah, so I'm just making sure I've got some part of an image I'm just kind of poking it down. I also could have crinkled the tissue paper before I stamped it. You see, we could wind up having a lot of experiments. So that's something you might want to do is just have some tissue paper, especially if you're working with colors, and just experiment and just work with some basic basic things. Try it out, and you could wind up with a lot of fun stuff. So I'm just tapping it. I'm not crinkling it. I'm not worried about any of that kind of thing. I'm just making sure it is glued to the cardstock. Looking good. Okay, I'm gonna put my brush in the water and I'm gonna go dry these and then we will finish the experiment. So I just used a hairdryer on a low setting to dry this glue a little faster. And they're coming out nice and flat. It's not a big deal at all. So now this is the one that hasn't been stamped yet. So let's go ahead and give that a nice stamping. And I do like to do the ghost stamping kind of thing. Just add a little something extra to the background. All right. So while that's drying a bit, let's take a little look at this. I can still feel a little teeny bit of dampness in there. So let me go finish drying. Let me go finish drying these things. Okay, here's our 3 experiments. We don't need our plastic now. So what we have, let's see, let's start. This is stamping on the tissue paper and and then letting it dry on the tissue paper and then applying it. And you can see we have rather blurry images. So there's a number of ways. So we'll try 3 different ways of removing the tissue. So this is the very watery, wet sort of look. Let me grab that paintbrush again and just take a little bit of water. And if you get tissue paper wet, it's very much like napkins. I mean, we could be doing the same sort of procedure as we do with napkins. So if you've ever done this sort of thing with napkins, so we could just get it wet and tear it off. So that's one kind of effect. So I've done this with napkins when I want a nice irregular edge. I'll just get it gently wet. It doesn't take a lot of water. And everything tears very easily. So that could be an interesting effect that you would like, and we can trim that further. We could also wrap it. We could have also wrapped everything around the edges. So that would be another thing you could do is you can wrap your tissue around the edges and then back this with another matching piece of or different color or whatever cardstock. Okay, so let's see, which one do I want to do? Well, I'm going to do this one with scissors. So of course we can, I always like to do it on the back side because I let the side of the scissors ride along the edge of the cardstock. I get a more accurate feel for it because that's what I'm feeling for. I'm feeling the side of the scissor riding along the edge of the cardstock. Whereas if I'm doing it this way, I'm not getting that same feel. So maybe it sounds a little odd, but it works for me. You might want to try it. It's working with the scissors to get the best result. Okay. So this one was stamping on the cardstock and then putting the tissue paper over the top. Gonna get that straight. And since I started watching Crafty by Toni at the beginning of this month, so I'm really happy to learn some of her techniques. She has one of those little sanding discs that's just like your inking. Um, uh, we have industrial size. What can I say? So you can actually sand it off the edges of the paper. Can you hear that? I have a headset microphone, and so um, you don't get all the sound effects. My husband's a woodworker as well as a children's book author, so and I've been making rubber stamps for nearly 30 years, so having sandpaper around is just something normal at our house. And there, I love this. This is from Toni, Crafty by Toni, where she uses a sanding disc to take off layers of paper from the edges and stuff. So those are our three results. So we have stamping on the tissue paper and applying it to a card. We have stamping on the card and applying the tissue paper. And then we have applying the tissue paper to the card and when it's dry, stamping on top of it. So there are our three experiments, and they're all three cool in their own way, you know? So you get a little bit more of um, the tissue paper kind of dulls out the colors because it's a layer on top of the inking. This one, I like this one a lot. I like both of these. This one, if you want a blurry effect, there's some applications or some times when you might really want a blurry effect. So even with the permanent dye ink, it's the tissue paper is so absorbent that you wind up with this kind of blurriness. And another note on napkins is that generally we're using napkins the way they are because they have pretty images on them, but that liner paper, the second and third layers, you could use those just like tissue paper. And then you can stamp on them and all of that sort of thing. So sometimes I've used the second or third layer of napkins and done some of the same kinds of techniques. So this is the first thing I wanted to share about tissue paper. So I hope that was helpful. And of course, you could also use glue stick. And I find glue stick, I run out of glue stick pretty fast. So I do like using the watered down PVA adhesive. And I also really love Yes Glue. Most of the time when I'm doing this sort of thing, well, yeah, I use Yes Glue quite a lot. That's one of my absolute favorites. It tends to this one kind of cupped quite a bit. In the Yes Glue, it doesn't cup quite as much. It doesn't wrinkle the paper quite as much. I think with all of these, I would glue on another layer of cardstock in a coordinating color or some tea-dyed paper or something like that. Um, yeah, so this is the first thing I wanted to show you. Because I mentioned Yes Paste, I wanted you to see what I did with it. And this is the primitive journal. And again, this is just tissue paper. It is white tissue paper. I used Memories dye-based ink, so it would be permanent and it wouldn't bleed. And I just put stamped all over the tissue paper, tore it up, and distressed it and just collaged. That's all there is to it. It worked out really great because the brown cardboard made a great transparent background. I think it came out excellent. I'm very proud of how these journals came out. I made two of them. So this is another tissue paper thing. Okay, I really want to show you this because it's fun. Um, you have to give it a try. I hope you will give it a try. So for this particular demonstration, I am going to use a mixed media paper. You could use watercolor paper. You would want to use something that is a very thick kind of paper. So you don't want to use something lightweight. Um, so mixed media is not super strong. This particular one is 160 GSM, 98 pound. It's a lightweight. So watercolor paper would be really, really good. I just want to use something that is easy for everybody to acquire. So a heavier GSM or pound would be really good, but we're not going to get this saturated. Mixed media is designed to get a certain amount of wetness, not saturated like watercolor paper, but it can get wetness. Because I mentioned it, I'm going to use the Yes paste for this so that you could see the jar. And if you haven't seen some of my other videos, you might not have seen me demo with Yes paste. So Yes paste is again, it's a water soluble, but it's a very thick kind of paste. And so I always have some water handy, both to keep my brush hydrated, the way I was talking about it, but also sometimes I have to add a little bit of water to loosen it up because when the tub gets kind of down like this, it starts to dry out a little bit on the surface. So I'll often spray a little water when I'm done for the day. I'll spray a little water on top of that surface just to keep it a little extra moist. Now, the reason I want to demo with a Matisse painting, actually, this one isn't a Matisse. I had another one in mind. This one is a Jelensky blue vase with oranges. So it's along the same lines as a Matisse painting. This is very simple. We can be very inspired by the early 20th century artists, you know, and they're wonderful to copy in various ways so that we start to understand what they were thinking about and we pick things that we like. You know, I like this. It has simplicity, but look at these wonderful, I mean, it's outlined with these blue lines. We're going to get to that. We're going to do this painting with tissue paper. And I've done this before, and there was a group of us that would get together and we did a whole summer where we did mixed media, tissue paper. This is just a remnant. So I'm kind of looking at the scale here. So this is a 9 by 12, and I don't need to fill it up all the way to the edges, but looking at this, I'm looking at this picture, and I see there's like this tablecloth in the background. So I want that tablecloth. And I don't have to have the whole width, but I think, you know, so I'm just going to tear off some. And that's not quite wide enough, so we're going to start with the tablecloth in the background, and everything else is going to go in front of it. But you'll see how much this is so cool to do this way. So I haven't done this in ages, so it's going to be fun to see how it comes out. So we can see this occupies a large amount of this area. So if you don't want to watch this, go ahead on the next chapter, go down to chapters. But I do invite you to watch because this is really fun. So I can see that the piece of paper I have here is pretty good. It covers a lot of space. I don't want it to cover that much space. So I'm just going to crinkle it a little bit. I'm gonna make the tissue paper kind of soften up a little bit because I'm not too worried about having this pattern show completely. I just want that background. So see where I'm going with this? I'm kind of creating a little mound shape. So we're looking at this and I'm not trying to copy that exactly. I'm just looking at, okay, I want to create kind of and maybe roll over these edges just a little bit. It's going to be fun. There we go. So we're thinking about this vase being here. And so, yes, I was a painting teacher for years and years, and I still am, you know, you never stop being a painting teacher. So I'm going to start rehydrating my brush here. And I'm going to, actually, I'm going to put a little bit in here, get this worked up. So I'm really working into the Yes paste, getting a good amount on my brush. Nice big amount, and loosening up that top surface again because I haven't used this in a few weeks. And I'm just going to scrub some on. We're going to cover this whole paper. So I'm just going to scrub some on to get started. You can also use the PVA, watered down PVA for this. This is a little thicker. It has a little more immediate adhesion properties. And it does need loosening up. So but it sticks quickly. Okay, so now I'm going to take my tissue paper and crinkles and all. I'm just going to smoosh it on there. Great thing to do with your kids too, get together with a bunch of people and just have some fun. Okay, so now as I press that down onto the paper, the base paper, I want to go ahead and make sure I've got all the edges. And this is more of a, if you wanted to use this as, say, a journal cover and do this kind of collage, because that's what we're doing. We're doing a collage. If you wanted to do this kind of collage on a journal cover, if you have your base of some kind of a cardboard or mat board is really nice, the artist mat board. I am not really trying to do much in the way of controlling the images themselves. I just want to get this really glued down. I don't plan on having this get, I don't know, roughed up all the time. When we open and close journal covers, they get roughed up. But the thing to do is when this is all done, when we're all done and it's all dry, is give it a nice coating of a Mod Podge or an acrylic medium, something to really hold this down. Get underneath all those little flaps. And the other thing about putting like a Mod Podge or an acrylic gel medium over the top is that it's going to create an extra layer of adhesion. It's really going to make it stick down tight. And again, if this is going to be on a journal cover or something like that, you'd want to do your best to get the bubbles out. Get everything sticking flat. I'm just going to cut off some of that excess and set that aside. Okay, so we have our tablecloth. Really, this is popping up, so I want to kind of get a little extra water, and if you have to, you can lift it a little bit, get some more glue underneath, and then push it back. I think that's fine. Okay, so what I want to do next is I decided I don't have any dark blue tissue paper, but I do have some nice green. So I'm looking at my green paper here. And I think, when I hold it over, I go like, well, it's going to be transparent. Maybe I don't want it to be totally transparent. And how tall do I want it to be? I'm going to make mine a little taller. So I just am thinking out loud for you. Let me slide that out of the way for a second. And I'm certainly not going to wait for it to dry. I want to just keep going. So what I'm doing is I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to work with 2 layers. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So this particular tissue paper has a shiny side and a dull side, which really doesn't matter. So how tall do I want it to be? Well, I don't want it. So I've got a square here. What I am going to do is I folded it in half, and I'm going to fold it in half again, and I'm going to create kind of a random, well, I think I'll round that bottom. I'm creating a random vase shape or bottle shape. And I am not trying to be too particular. See? And I didn't do that quite right. because I forgot. I'm going to open it up. So it's just tissue paper, right? Okay, let's see. Oh, we're almost there. Let me go ahead and just modify that a little bit. Cut it a little big so that you can shrink it down. It's getting there. I think I want to narrow that neck just a little bit more. This is play. All right. Well, I'm satisfied enough with that. I'm just going to round that bottom just a little bit more, keeping my layers together. And if they aren't perfectly together all the time, that's okay. Okay. So now we have kind of a fun bottle shape. I'm going to work with one layer at a time. And I'm deciding, okay, I'm going to put it there. So I need some paste up here. And I just need to goop up what I've already got done. I hope this is entertaining for you. Something a little different from all the usual journal stuff. We did make 3 tags. So now why I was thinking of 2 layers of tissue paper is because that it is transparent. It's so if we want a very transparent looking bottle, we can see the tablecloth behind it. But I'm thinking I want it just a little bit more opaque than that. The other thing about Yes Paste you need to know is that it can be reactivated. So that's another reason to use some kind of a acrylic medium like Mod Podge or acrylic, because that will seal it so that any drops of water or anything, because I did this sort of thing on a journal cover and got caught in the rain and the cover got sticky. I went, uh-oh, because I hadn't covered it yet with anything, and it was this exact type of collage that I'm doing right now. So that's something you want to be aware of. Okay, so see, we're coming along here. So I'm thinking that for the oranges, what I want to do is create a little bit of a mixture of the yellow and the orange. So I'm going to cut out, I want to do a couple of layers. I'm going to do more than one. They don't need to be very big. So I'm being very random. So I want to have some squares. I'm just chopping off some paper so I have something that's easier to work with than the giant sheet. So I hope you're inspired to start saving some tissue paper. Now, now of course, this is a good time to really crinkle up the paper. I have a little junk drawer that is full of shapes, and so bottle caps and various things that give me a template for plain old shapes. So let's see. That still seems a little bit. Oh well, we'll just cut it a little smaller as we go. So I can just layer up all 4 of these and cut out some circles. That's just the starter layer. Now where else do we want to put? We want to put one up here. So this is just, I'm getting a little bit of a base layer down. And then I'm going to get the orange tissue out. So here it is with all of the excess cut off, and there was my inspiration. I just kind of want to encourage you to explore the possibilities because this is a perfectly fun painting medium. And speaking of fun, just for fun, let's take a look at it with a mat. Art always looks better with a mat around it. And if to take this a little bit further, you could use I think I'll use a little oil pastel on the top and make these a little more opaque. But I'm just going to take this a little bit to the next level. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. This is just a fun demo that I just wanted to get something out there for you to play with papers in a whole different way. I think I could show you a lot of things that you could do with tissue paper, but here's the simple things. You could do these, we've got these tags. They're really, really simple, and there's different ways of applying the ink and the tissue paper and all that. Can't get any more simple than that. And this is one of the primitive journals, so you can see how that cover worked when it was all finished. And then on the inside, I wrapped everything to the inside and covered it with another paper. This is a very unique sort of project I really enjoyed. Okay, so this is what I wanted to share with you today. I hope you found my still life painting kind of a fun, different sort of thing, and I hope you'll try something like that. I've done quite intricate tissue paper paintings, and there's a lot of possibilities with it. Really, there are. So, golly, I hope that was fun for you and that you got something out of it. I appreciate you being here and watching, and I look forward to hearing your comments. So, thanks a lot, and see you next time. Bye for now.